Welcome to episode 2 of the JavaScript tutorials. Today we're going to be looking at arrays. So here we have an array. It is stored in a variable that we called alphabet. And we know it's an array because of these opening and closing curly braces. So within this array we have 6 strings. These 6 strings are delimited by commas. Each of these commas represents a new element in the array. Let's go ahead and run this real quick to see what's going on. We have node arrays. Okay, so we've logged A, E, and 6. So how did we get those? So as you can see, these are indexed, starting with 0. The first element, we can refer to the first element by using index 0. And we go up from there. So when we want to get the first element, we say alphabet. And then within the little brackets, we put the index we'd like to refer to. So again, this is the first element because we say index 0. Index 0 is always going to be the first element. If we want the 5th element, we place in 4 as our index. And as you can see, E occupies index 4. The 6 comes from a call grabbing the property of length on our alphabet array. So what is the length of this array? Well, we have 6 elements in our array, therefore the length of the array is 6. Okay, so taking a look at a few more arrays, we've got this array storing only numbers. It's called 1 to 10, and it really just stores 1 to 10. It's kind of confusing because the index is always 1 less than the value which encompasses that index. So if we look at this 1 to 10, we grab the second index and we multiply it by the 5th index in that same array. Let's see what this gives us. So if we go node and we go there, okay, so we get 18. So why is this? It might seem so that it should be 10 maybe, but no. So we've got index 2, the value is 3. At index 5, the value is 6. We multiply those two together to get the products 18. Here we have a Boolean array, and I just called it is even, and I just kind of decided to store true, false, repeating 6 elements in length. If we grab index 3 of this array, we get false. So here's an interesting example. We've got this table, and it's actually an array where each element is another array. Now this is kind of funky. So sometimes we have strings and numbers, and that's fine. You can store any amount of data. An array can hold strings and numbers and booleans and also other arrays. So when we store an array inside of an array, we get a multi-dimensional array. Even in this array, we could have multiple arrays. So we could get 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, 256-dimensional arrays. We store quite a few things in here. We store 4 arrays, and they're filled with, different lengths and different data types, and some of them don't even have anything. So let's come over here and run this real quick and see what we get. So I first just print out the entire table array. This gives us a little bit of a better view of it. This is what it printed out right here. It's multiple lines, an array. The first index is occupied by another array. We've got the string data, a 1 and a 2.5, and then after that, we have index 1, or the second element, which holds false, string yes, string no. On the third element, or the second index, we've got an empty array. Nothing in it, just an empty array. And then on the last one, or the fourth one, or at index 3, we have a string A, a 2, another string, a bunch of B's, true, and $55 in a string. So if we call the length on our table, well, since we have 4 arrays in this array, that means we have 4 elements, and so the length of our array is 4. That's where we get this 4. Now if we look at index number 2, in our array, which means we will be looking here at this empty array, and we call the length on that empty array, we will get 0. Let's say we want to look at index 1, which will actually point to this one. Let's run this real quick. We get 3 as the length. And this makes sense because we have 3 elements in this array. So now we have a 2-dimensional array. Once again, I called this times table. Now, each of these arrays within this big array have the same amount of elements. They've got the same length. That doesn't really mean anything. I just decided to do that to make it look tidy. So these are the times tables. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can imagine like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the multiplying of the 2 and the 2 gets you 4, and the 3 and the 3 gets you 9, and the 3 and the 2 gets you 6. So it's just a simple times table. I decided to put an array. So the way that we can refer to these individual values within this 2-dimensional array is actually pretty intuitive. So if we come over and run this real quick, we get first an array printing out, which makes sense because we refer to our times table array and we go to the second index, or index 1. We look into it and we're like, okay, well, we just want to print this. We just want to print this element. Well, that element also is an array. So in order to print an array, we just kind of print all the values in the array. Looking at index 1 inside of index 1 of our times table brings us like so. So we go index 1 in our times table. This brings us to the array. Now we're like, okay, we want index 1 in there. So we're like, okay, index 1 is this 4 right here. Okay, well, let's log that real quick. Neat. We got 4. Same with all the rest of these calls. We look into 2, the index number 2, and we get this array. We just simply log this array. Now, if we go to the 4th element inside of the second, or it's not, okay, if we go into index 4 of index number 2 of our times table, we'll be looking inside of 2 and then saying, okay, I want index 4, so this gives us 15. And same with 3. We look into index number 3, we print that. I just simply wanted to print it. Going down here, we do the same thing, except we find index 4. That gives us 20. This is a multi-dimensional array. Not often will you have to use these. It's just good to know that you can store anything within arrays, including more arrays.